It's election night across our state, and one thing is top of mind: the cost of living. So we honed in on that, specifically housing. According to Zillow, the average house in Minnesota is selling for $348,000. That's about $8,000 more than this exact same time last year. The average rent in the state, $1,600 a month. It's even more painful when you go into the Twin Cities metro area, with the average rent in Minneapolis being $1,750 a month. This is weighing on the minds of voters tonight, and Heidi has the story.
As voters head to the polls, affordable housing, whether through renting or owning, remains a top issue for both candidates and voters.
I just had my 29th birthday, so home ownership is definitely something I'm looking towards as I enter my 30s.
Janine Erickson and Mackay House rent an apartment in Uptown, but both are interested in home ownership.
I always just keep the Zillow app just to keep eyes on things and see where things are going. But the prices are significant and they are increasing, and things are getting more deprived as costs go up, and like people are having a harder time on finding like housing in general.
I definitely feel like cost-wise there's definitely barriers. One of my colleagues runs a program actually on home ownership and like how to make it more accessible to people, especially BIPOC people. I just know for me it feels very like inaccessible, very expensive.
According to a Minnesota Realtors report over the summer, not only did the median sales price surpass the $400,000 threshold for the first time in the Twin Cities metro, the median statewide also set a new record of $370,000.
Once upon a time, when housing prices and income were growing in tandem, this was less of a problem. So I think we have to be really attentive to both household income as well as issues related to housing costs.
Ryan Allen, professor and associate dean for research at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, says new supply has got to be a part of the solution.
Part of the reason we find ourselves in this situation is, particularly during the pandemic and immediately after the pandemic, new construction really stalled in many parts of the country, let alone in Minnesota.
Allen says we may find in the future more emphasis on multifamily housing.
One of the things that's interesting to reflect on is this coupling between home ownership and what it means to be middle class. This has been here for decades, but let's assume for a minute that we don't correct this, that income is still falling short of what housing appreciation is doing. Does that mean there'll be no more middle class? No, I don't think so. I just think we'll change our definition of what we think middle class means.
Candidates have their own ideas on how to address the issue. In Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob Frey has campaigned touting his investments in affordable housing and establishing a $15 minimum wage.
People should be able to afford to live in a great city.
Challenger State Senator Omar Fateh says he supports a $20 minimum wage and rent stabilization policies.
A policy that protects tenants, protects renters.
I've always lived in apartments for the most part.
Janine and Mackay are voting with all this in mind.
For a lot of people, maybe you're still paying off your college debt or you got credit card debt to pay off and like groceries aren't getting cheaper. And I want to do this, but it's like, okay, at what cost to the rest of the quality of my life and the cost of living?
Professor Allen says while we're especially seeing the Twin Cities metro area becoming a more expensive housing market, other parts of the state, like parts of western and southern Minnesota, have much cheaper real estate. However, you have to keep in mind salaries in those areas, which tend to be lower than the Twin Cities, Jana.